Dexter. At 5:30 every morning during my pregnancy, Dexter would wake up. Regardless of what day it was of the week, 5:30 every morning, I'd get a lovely kick.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Welcome to Still a Part of Us. I'm just so excited to talk to Emily today. She reached out to me and she has, I feel like a really different story, really an incredible story, and so excited that she is willing to come on and chat with us today. So welcome, Emily. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So Emily, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are located at, as well as kind of what your family looks like at the time of Dexter's birth?
Okay, I am in the UK. I am a mum. I also work as a special needs teacher. And I have the most gorgeous daughter called Rosie, who is 2. I live about an hour from London, and I live on a small estate with my whole family, my 2 sisters, my nan, who unfortunately passed away, but my granddad and my mum and my dad. So we all live very, very close, within walking distance of each other.
That is cool.
It's nice. It can get a bit too much sometimes. Someone just
Yes.
drops in and says hello. But yeah, it generally is nice.
That is wonderful. And what do you like to do as a family? What do you like to do? Just in your spare time.
Oh, I used to have horses, so I
Mm.
used to ride a lot. Um, Unfortunately, Rosie doesn't like horses,
Oh,
so they're currently out on loan at the moment. Me and Rosie spend a lot of time swimming,
mm,
walking. I just like to do things to help her.
yeah.
Generally, we go to soft play a lot, spend time with family.
Hmm.
Yeah, just have fun together. She's my little bestie.
That is so fun. Okay, can you tell me what you said soft play?
Soft play, yeah. It's like a kids' play area,
Oh, okay.
which is all kind of soft, so they
Okay,
can
okay.
trampoline areas and ball
Perfect.
pits and slides and
Yes, okay.
stuff like that.
That's awesome. That we have things like that, but I've never heard it be called that either. Actually, I'm not sure what it's called here in the States. Now that I think about it, I was like, a jungle gym? I don't know. Well, that is wonderful, and that's kind of a bummer that you don't have the horses right now, but I how fun. What a fun hobby that would be. So okay, so I also want to know a little bit about your family. So you have Rosie, and she is 2. And how
She
long
is.
ago was Dexter born at the time of this recording? So people know in relation to like your family how that looks and how long ago it was for you since you gave birth.
It was 14 weeks today.
So everybody, it's 14 weeks ago that, and she's talking to us. That's the other thing that was quite astounding to me that that Emily has felt comfortable enough to share. And I know you have shared quite a bit already, but we want to so grateful that we had this chance. Okay, so tell me about what were you planning on getting pregnant again then after you had Rosie? Was a couple of kids in the plan, or do you want to have a big family, or was this kind of more of a surprise having getting pregnant with Dexter?
No, Dexter was very much a wanted baby. It's me and Rosie. I'm a single mum by choice.
Mhm.
And Dexter, I used a donor to get
Mhm.
pregnant with. So no, he was very much a wanted baby.
Okay.
I was very fortunate. It worked first time. So literally this time last year, I was looking at getting pregnant. Yeah, I wanted and still do want to give Rosie a sibling that
Yeah.
lives with us, that is home with us all of the time,
Yeah.
someone that she's got for her, as well as me.
Yeah. When you decided on like, I know that the process to get a sperm donor, I mean, I'm sure you went through whatever bio of the sperm donor was. I mean, was there anything that jumped out at you or anything in your process of choosing a sperm donor?
No, it was very much aesthetic. It was mainly looking at
Mm.
hair and eye
Yeah.
colour,
Yeah. Yeah.
and education, making sure that they had high standard of education,
Great.
were the things that were important to me.
Okay. And then, so first time it worked, you got pregnant right away. Were you completely surprised? Because I would be. I was
I,
like, woohoo!
I, I was really surprised. It was
Hmm.
quite a strange kind of method of getting pregnant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really surprised and really happy, really, really happy.
Wonderful. Did you tell Rosie that too? Like that you were planning on this? I know she was only one, right? When
Yeah,
um
she was 18 months.
18 months. Okay,
So
so she probably didn't quite understand what was
no, I
happening
didn't.
necessarily.
I can't actually remember when I told her about Dexter.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
if I'm honest, I think I talk to her all the time. We're constantly having conversation. I think I probably just kind of threw it in a conversation just to get her head around it,
Yeah.
rather than any big announcement to her. I think it was more kind of, oh, you're going to have a baby kind of conversation that we kind of built on so that she would understand,
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Yes. And Rosie she's not from a sperm donor, right?
No, no,
Okay, great. I just
no.
wanted to make sure because somebody's probably going to, email us or something and say, "Hey, tell me more about that." I'm like, "Oh, I actually didn't think about asking." Um okay, so then you got pregnant. Did you tell your family, friends? Or was
um,
this something that was like, I'm going to just keep this down, a little quiet for a minute?
yeah, I'm quite a private, independent person.
Mhm.
And yeah, I kept it to myself.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember. I think my mum might have been the first person I told.
Mhm.
And I think I only told her because I needed her to look after
Oh,
Rosie to go to an appointment. And I think she
exactly.
asked, and I think then I just kind of said to her, "Oh, by the way, I'm pregnant." But it wasn't any kind of big announcement. I'm not that kind of person. I'm
Okay.
very much a private, keep it to myself. Um, so yeah, I didn't do any kind of big announcement. But my mum, I think, was the first person I told, and then my sister guessed. My sister was
Oh,
like,
really?
"You look different."
Oh, yeah. I know sisters are that
um,
way sometimes.
yeah, she was. She's very much. You look different. Are you pregnant? And I couldn't lie to her at that
Uh-huh.
point.
Yeah.
Um, and that was around 9 or 10 weeks, I think, that they both kind of
Yeah.
knew. Um, and then I didn't really tell anyone else for quite a while after that.
Okay. Now, when you went in for that doctor's appointment, when you asked your mom to watch Rosie, was that just right after you had taken like the pregnancy test and saw that, and just this was kind of the follow up?
In the UK, you do the pregnancy test, and then you contact your midwife.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a booking an appointment with the midwife at between 9 and 10 weeks.
Okay, great.
And it was the same midwife I'd had with Rosie,
Mm-hmm.
so it was really lovely. So I went to see her. Yeah, between 9 and 10 weeks.
Okay, wonderful. And how did everything look at that time, at that visit?
It literally is just booking in. So you're literally just talking. You
Oh,
don't
great.
actually
Okay.
get to do anything else other
Okay.
than that. It's kind of a lot of paperwork, to be honest, going through your
Yeah.
last pregnancy, and then finding, just literally lots of paperwork, to be
Okay.
honest. And then from there, the midwife books a 12-week scan.
Okay.
So that's what she did.
Gotcha. And just as a really quick, was there any issues with Rosie's pregnancy? Did you have any other pregnancies between I mean, have you had any other losses or anything of that nature, miscarriages, that type
I
of
have
thing?
had losses. I have had
Okay.
miscarriages.
Yeah.
I have got a blood clotting disorder when I'm pregnant called
Oh.
antiphospholipid syndrome.
Yeah.
Um, so I have to inject and take aspirin when
Okay.
I'm pregnant.
Okay.
No, Rosie's pregnancy had a really lovely pregnancy with
Good.
Rosie.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
it was
So
all
you,
good.
so you do have something that they watch for,
Yeah,
but also it was Rosie's pregnancy was good. So that's
yes.
great. That's great. Okay. Okay, so then that 9-week appointment was a lot of paperwork. and
Yeah.
and then you did go to the 12-week appointment. Were you feeling sick in this that first bit of the trimester?
No, I wasn't. I was really
Okay.
fortunate. I felt a little bit sick with Rosie, but I didn't have any sickness at
Okay.
all with Dexter. I was really fortunate in my pregnancy.
That was nice. It's so nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
It's like, oh, one less thing. Okay, and then how did the scan go? And are we talking, I'm assuming it's an ultrasound, or how invasive is this particular
Yeah, the 12-week scan is normally checking. They do different kind of tests at our 12-week scans. They check
mhm.
the fold behind the baby's neck for things
Oh,
like Down
yep. Yep.
syndrome. So
Okay.
they do that is what it generally is for. And then obviously it's called a dating scan. So they check your dates.
Yes.
I didn't get as far as that point with Dexter because as soon as they did the scan, they noticed that something was wrong.
Okay.
Quite wrong with Dexter, unfortunately. And I had to have a consultant come in to the
Okay.
appointment and yeah, checked everything all over again and confirmed that Dexter had anencephaly.
Yeah.
So his nuchal fold on his neck hadn't properly sealed together, so his brain was exposed. So yeah.
Yeah. And that was seen fairly early at that 12-week appointment. So when they told that to you, what were you thinking?
I had quite a negative experience at the beginning of my pregnancy, actually, with Dexter, with medical professionals around me.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, I was seen with a screening midwife, they're called over here, um, and she was quite negative. She told me that I needed to terminate the pregnancy,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and kind of didn't give me any other options. It was that's what you're doing. Like you're either
Yeah.
going to miscarry or you need to terminate. And I was very much like, I don't really know what I'm doing. She booked the termination in
Oh,
um, for the following week. But when we got to that, I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't, by that point, by the time that the termination had come around, I had done my own research and I had found a fantastic Facebook group, um, which had really helped for me to understand the condition
mhm.
and understand how other people's pregnancies had gone with babies with this condition. Um, and I'd found it really difficult having the diagnosis and having the pressure of a termination. It had made me really anxious and it had made me, I don't even, really uneasy within myself.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I kind of decided within myself that actually I wasn't going to do that, um, I remember talking to my midwife, Sarah, and I said to her, I think I'm just going to let the baby decide. I
Mhm.
think I'm just going to let the baby decide what happens. And that's what I decided to do.
Okay. And what did your midwife say? Was she supportive of the
My
decision?
community midwife was
Okay. She
phenomenal.
was. Okay.
She was amazing. She turned out through all my pregnancy to be the most amazing person.
Awesome.
She backed me 100%
Mhm.
and decided to kind of join on my journey.
Oh, really?
She went to all of my appointments with me. Um, she was at the other end of the telephone 24/7. If I needed her, I text her and she would contact me. She also ended up being at Dexter's birth.
Really?
Um, yeah, which was lovely. So yeah, I was really fortunate. In the UK, it's quite unheard of that a
Mhm.
midwife would give you that continuity of care.
Mhm.
Um, but she went above and beyond and gave that to me. So yeah, I was very fortunate.
Yes, that is wonderful. Yeah, because in the United States, sometimes that continuity of care is very lacking as well. Okay, so I guess maybe can you tell us a little bit about that Facebook group that you found that you felt like I would like to, just like you said, let Dexter decide?
Yeah, there's an amazing Facebook group that's set up by a lady. I can't remember what country she's in. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember. But she's not in England.
Mhm.
Um, and there are, I think, about 400 or 500
Mm.
parents on there, and some grandparents of all around the world of babies or parents of babies that have had anencephaly and
Yeah.
that have continued to with their pregnancies.
Yeah.
There are a few Facebook groups of parents with babies that were given this diagnosis that haven't continued with the pregnancy. I came to find out quite quickly into my pregnancy that in the UK, it's very, very rare to continue with the pregnancy with a baby that has a terminal condition. I think from what I gather from the statistics my bereavement midwife has found, I think there was under 20 last year babies with anencephaly that were born in the UK.
I see. Okay.
The kind of termination rate is in the 96% kind of rate. It's very, very high. Dexter was the first baby with anencephaly born at the hospital that he was born at, and the first baby that any consultant or midwife that I was in contact with had seen.
Yes.
So
yeah, and we were talking about this before. Like you had mentioned, you know, in the United States, a lot of times we do just hold on to the pregnancy regardless of whatever condition. And while it is very different in the UK, where there's usually a decision early on to terminate the pregnancy. So, and to think, oh wow, like Dexter was the first one at that hospital to be born with anencephaly, and that would actually make it really, yeah, as a medical professional, like trying to figure out how to navigate what the best way to support the mom, right? Like you through that process. So
to be honest, through the whole process, I very much took the reins of my care, and I took a lot of the information and the statistics and the things I'd found from the Facebook group from other parents that had been through this, and took it to the medical professionals. And I was very fortunate that I did find some really amazing medical professionals that helped navigate it and helped me to achieve what I wanted to try and achieve during the pregnancy.
Yeah. What were your hopes for the pregnancy? That he would be born alive, he would be so that you could meet him and spend time with him?
That was
Okay.
what the end goal was, that we would get to term, get to induction,
Mhm.
and hopefully meet Dexter and have some time with him alive.
Great. What would have been the usual, do they suggest trying to get to 37? Were a lot of the cases that were in that Facebook group, were people able to carry the baby to term?
It was very varied.
Okay, it was.
I was given lots of negative statistics at the beginning of my
Yes.
pregnancy from some of the medical professionals that weren't quite as supportive.
Mhm.
That I would get preeclampsia, that
Right.
Dexter would stop growing, that he would pass away before term.
Mhm.
There was lots of things that I was kind of thrown at me. In the Facebook group, a lot of parents, it very much differed. Quite a lot of people went into preterm labour.
They did.
Quite a lot of people, it kind of almost varied from one extreme to the other. A lot of
Mm.
people either went into preterm labour, or quite a lot of people didn't go into labour and were kind of 42 weeks
Yeah.
because the baby doesn't have the right chemicals in their brain, because obviously their brain hasn't grown as it
Mhm.
should have. A lot of the time they don't put mums into spontaneous labour.
Ah, okay.
So using that information, I decided on induction,
Okay.
and decided that my aim was to get to 38 weeks. That was my aim,
Okay.
um, to hopefully give me the best chance of Dexter being as well as he possibly could be,
Right.
and also hoping that my body would be a bit more ready for labour at 38 weeks.
Okay. And so, you got this news, you made the decision the week later that you were not going to terminate the pregnancy. And so tell me how you navigated the visits and that type of thing. What were you kind of like, what were your plans on how this was going to look? Because like you said, you took kind of, you're like, I'm going to make this pregnancy the way I want it to be. And I really do hope that I get to meet him at 38 weeks. So tell me other things that you were like hoping to do with this particular pregnancy.
I think the biggest thing was to enjoy it. I
Yeah.
wanted to enjoy growing him, and I wanted to experience things that I probably hadn't experienced with my other pregnancy.
Mm.
Um, we did different things during my pregnancy that like I said, haven't experienced. I did some 4D scans, which I didn't unfortunately get with Rosie.
Oh,
Um, which were really lovely.
Yeah.
I had a maternity photo shoot, which I have never done before.
Oh, good.
Which I've got lovely photos of that as well. I've got Dexter's heartbeat in a teddy bear,
Yeah.
which is really special now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just enjoyed it.
Okay.
I wanted to focus on the good rather than the inevitable.
Yeah. That's a very nice, like, I love that shift of thought because I think sometimes people, when they get to that, there's this anticipatory grief that that's going to be happening. But I love how you it kind of embrace, like, there's gonna be some joy in this too. I'm gonna take my time and love him, love on him and grow him. Like you said, enjoy growing him. And I was like, that is a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah,
Um,
and also
oh, go ahead.
Rosie really enjoyed it as well.
Did she?
She loved while he was in my tummy. She would play with him and sing to him.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really lovely.
That is so cool. And did you end up telling your family that you were pregnant and then that this was going to be happening?
I think that was probably the hardest conversations. They were the hardest conversations that I had to have. Um, was, hey, I'm pregnant, but unfortunately, baby's not gonna
Yeah.
not gonna be bringing the baby home. Um, they were the challenging ones. But my family know me very well. They know I'm very strong-minded, and when
Mhm.
I decide I'm going to do something, they all backed me 100%. There was no doubt from anyone that I was going to be okay and get through this.
Yeah. That is great. And having your family's support and knowing that they'll take care of you, or like, yeah, that's great. We had the main scan. You also, do they just continue doing some scans throughout the pregnancy visits and such?
No, in the UK, we generally have a 12-week scan and then a 20-week
A
anomaly
20-week.
scan.
Okay. Mhm.
And then because of my blood clotting, I with Rosie had growth scans.
Mm.
So when I was deciding what care I wanted during my pregnancy with my midwife, I opted for the growth scan. So I had
Okay.
a 20-week, I think I had a 24-week scan as well, just because I shifted consultants and went to a different consultant. And they just did a general scan as well, just to confirm the diagnosis again. And again, like I said, Dexter it's very rare that people continue with these pregnancies. So I think they wanted to see him. I think they wanted to see
Oh,
for
okay.
themselves a baby that had anencephaly.
Mhm.
I then had a 28-week scan and a 32 and 36-week scan.
Okay. And that is actually, I feel like, some precious time too, because then you get to see him and see how he's doing and him moving
Yeah,
and all that.
he was a pickle for the scans. Um,
Was he?
I was I was told at the beginning of my pregnancy that because obviously the lack of brain, Dexter would only make involuntary movements,
Mm.
and that was very much not the case. Dexter would boot them if they were to get near him. He was he was very, very funny.
Oh,
Um,
that is so great.
caught him on scan sucking his thumb.
Oh, you
Um,
did. Oh,
yeah, which was really lovely. Yeah, he would kick the consultant every time she would scan. He was kicking her. He was not overly impressed. And whenever my midwife went to listen to his heartbeat, he always curled up in a little ball.
oh.
She was always like, "I can feel his bum. He's in a ball again.
That is
Not
so
sure where
funny.
his limbs are."
So he definitely had personality, it sounds like.
He had serious character. Yeah, he was a 5:30 wake up baby
Yeah.
every morning. Um, And he was, I think, babies with anencephaly, from the Facebook group, a lot of the mums state are very active, and he was really
Mhm.
active, which was lovely because the reassurance that he was active was
Yeah.
just nice to have every day.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes a little bit too active. Sometimes I'd be like, "Oh my ribs! I need, could I have them back, please?" But yeah, it was lovely. It was nice and reassuring.
And was he growing? Was he growing okay then? He was, progressing in
Yeah,
that sense?
yeah, he it was difficult looking back now from the weight that he was born and the weights that he were predicted. I don't know about the way that they measure babies in America, but the way they measure the femur around the tummy and the head, and they those three measurements then give you an estimated weight obviously they couldn't do a head measurement of Dexter.
Yes.
So we only had his tummy and his femur to go by, and he was growing perfectly my
Mhm.
whole pregnancy. He weighed, I think it was about 1.5 pounds less than they expected him to weigh,
Oh,
but actually was the size of a newborn baby. But I think the weight would have been his head.
yes. Yeah.
If that
Oh,
makes
yes.
sense.
Yes,
He
completely.
he was only 5.5 pounds, but he fit perfectly into newborn clothing.
Right. You just did
Whereas
not
a
have
normal
his
5.5 pound baby would be in prem
in
clothes or
yes,
small.
exactly. They would
So
not
I
fit
think,
into.
yeah, it was very much he weighed lovely all through his pregnancy. He just weighed less than was expected because the weight of his head
His
wasn't
head.
there.
Yep. That makes complete sense. When did you find out the gender? Was that did you do any genetic tests at 12 weeks, or was it simply at the 20-week scan?
Yeah, at the 20-week scan.
Okay, wonderful. So were you did you have any feeling about if it was going to be a boy or a girl?
I actually thought that he was a girl.
Oh, okay.
I did. I don't know why. Um, I did think he was going to be a girl. I think because I'd looked at it sounds really silly, the Chinese gender prediction,
Oh,
and it was right with Rosie, and it
uh-huh.
was meant to be a girl with Dexter. So I just presumed because it was right before that it would be right this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Obviously,
That is great. I love that.
I was
So,
wrong.
yeah, you're like, "Okay. Okay." So then that was a surprise, it sounds like. You're like,
It
"Oh,
was.
wait."
I had at my anatomy scan,
Mhm.
they checked everything like they do normally. They were. I had a brilliant sonographer. She was amazing. She spent a lot of time, and she went over everything. And Dexter, apart from his head, everything else was perfect.
Really? Yeah.
Like, every single thing. We saw all his fingers. We saw all his toes. That was the scan. He was sucking his thumb,
Yeah.
which was lovely. And yeah, and then she surprised me with it was a boy.
You're like, "Wait, I was not I was not planning on that."
And then they said to me, "Has he got a name?" And I think because because he had a terminal condition, I think people just presumed that I would name him straight away. It almost seemed like a presumption that I had, and I did have a name. Dexter. I'd watched a TV program a year before, and there was a young boy on there called Dexter,
Mhm.
and he'd fallen in love with this girl, and it was this lovely, lovely program. And she called him Dex a lot of the time,
Dex.
and
Oh.
I don't know why, but Dex just to me was a really naughty, cheeky boy's name, and I just loved it. And I just yeah, and as soon as she asked me, "Do you have a name?" It was the only name I could think. It
That
was the only name it had to be.
yeah.
He already had such character.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, and we call him Dex quite a lot actually now. I refer to him as Dex quite a lot. It
Oh, that
suited him.
is so cute. I love that so much. I love when people tell us how they choose their names, and the inspiration comes from everywhere. It seems like that's so fun, and it does feel like kind of a cheeky name. So,
Yeah, I think he would have been a really cheeky, naughty little boy.
so Emily, you're going along. You're enjoying your pregnancy. You said you did have a 4D scan. Was that, I'm assuming, a little bit later, or
I think it was 32 weeks at the 4D
okay,
scan. We're not allowed children at our NHS scans.
okay.
So I took Rosie with me
Oh,
to the 4D scan with my best friend. He wasn't cooperating at that scan either. I think I had to go for a walk for 10 minutes because he didn't want to cooperate. um, but yeah, we saw him, and I've got a lovely video of him, and I've got some lovely photos of him.
yeah.
But he was asleep for a lot of it, I think, in that one. Yeah, and didn't want to cooperate.
He's cheeky, remember?
Yeah, exactly.
um, and when did you end up doing your maternity photos? I'm assuming kind of around that time, a little bit later.
um, yeah, no, I did. I didn't do them till about 35 weeks,
Okay.
36 weeks, I think. Um, yeah, I found a lovely photographer who very kindly gifted them to me.
Oh,
She was, yeah, really, really lovely. And I went in the said to her, I'm not very photogenic. I'm very sorry. And she was like, everyone says that. And I was like, I'm really nervous. And by the end of it, I was loving it. It was
Oh, good.
so magical.
That's a
And
good
he loved it.
photographer.
Yeah, he spent the whole time kicking. Literally
Oh,
she took a photo of what looked like his bum sticking out my stomach when
no
he was
way.
moving. Yeah, he was enjoying himself too.
Yeah, that is so cool. That's a fun experience to remember and to have been able to do that. Did you okay, so this is always a little tricky question for people that have like you said a terminal diagnosis or something that they know that maybe the baby would have severe disabilities after they're born. But did you guys have a baby shower or anything to celebrate Dexter coming into the world? I'm some people do and some people don't. So I'm just
Yeah, no,
curious.
I didn't with Rose either. I'm not really that kind of
Okay,
person.
okay,
I'm
okay.
quite a private person.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So
So yeah, no, I'm not really that kind of person. I think it was more just a celebration, just generally. I think every time we were around, everyone was talking about Dexter as though he
oh,
was here. Um, we all
yeah,
spoke like he was very real from the moment everyone knew about him.
yeah,
Um, and that just continued throughout my whole pregnancy. Very much kind of, oh, Dexter's doing this, or what's happening with Dexter this week, and is he, and then he's growing, or what he would be able to do if he was to be born at that point.
yeah,
So yeah, we kind of just lived in the moment with him.
yeah. That is very cool and unusual, I want to say, because a lot
Mm.
of, at least here in the United States, there's a lot of shying away from bringing up anything that could make you sad and such. So that's really neat that people, your family, it sounds like we're so willing to just be with you and enjoy him.
I think for me, I haven't experienced too much death in my life. I've been very fortunate. I've lost my nan. I was very close to her, and my other grandparents, but I wasn't particularly close to them. And I think death hasn't had that much of an impact on my life
Yeah,
up until this point. So navigating it and working out how to deal with it before you get to it
yeah,
was quite a challenge. I knew I didn't want to be sad, and I knew I wanted to enjoy what I had at the time of having it.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Like you said, you're very independent and know what you want, and I think going into it with that mindset is very helpful. Just to like, this is I would like this to be the way it is. Okay, so then you are going along. Dexter's progressing. Are you having any issues? I know that you were taking aspirin, getting injections on a very regular basis. How are you feeling with the pregnancy? Are you doing okay?
I was really lucky. I didn't even really feel that pregnant.
Really?
Apart from him moving,
Yeah.
I didn't. I was really fortunate. I was really, really fortunate. I had a little bit of heartburn
Hmm.
every now and again. I didn't really get the pregnancy tiredness.
Yeah. Oh,
Um, I
lucky.
didn't really. Yeah. Even with the 2-year-old to run round after, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't really. I don't know whether it's because in my mind I was very, very conscious of. I wanted to enjoy it, so
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna look for the things that potentially could have been happening. I wanted to enjoy it. I didn't want to moan that my back was hurting.
Yeah.
I wanted to savor the fact that he was moving.
Yeah.
Um, I have really fond memories of being pregnant with Dexter. It was
Good.
lovely. I
Good.
5:30 every morning we'd get the wake up
There he is.
and it would start and continue all day. A little bit of heartburn, but yeah, I had a really nice, small, neat bump. Smaller than with Rosie actually. He did like to tuck himself up quite a lot in my
Yeah.
tummy. Um, yeah, no, it was really lovely. I had a really lovely pregnancy with him.
Good. Good. No, and no health issues with your syndrome.
Nope,
Okay. Great. Okay.
nope. I was very lucky. Like I said earlier, I was told that there would be quite a lot of potential risks of carrying him.
Yes.
But I was very fortunate. And I didn't get anything. I didn't get preeclampsia. My blood pressure was really low the whole time.
Oh, good.
I was told as well there was quite a high risk of, I can't ever pronounce it properly. We have too much fluid. Polyhydramnios, is that what it's
Yes.
called?
Yeah.
Something like
Polyhydro.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of babies with anencephaly, because their swallowing reflux isn't very good.
Yes.
Um, that is something that's quite a lot of mums suffer with. I decided, I remember very clearly at the appointment, I think it was my 24-week appointment with the new consultant. And they were very much like, you will get this, and we will drain the fluid.
Okay.
And I stood there with my midwife and I was like, I'm not going to get it. I'm not getting it. I'm just telling you now, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, well, let's just see. I was like, no, I'm not getting it.
No, don't want to do
I've
it.
decided. Yeah, I've decided I'm not having it. I think for me, the fact that we'd seen him sucking his thumb meant to me that he had a swallowing reflux.
Yeah.
So I was very much reflex even. I was very much adamant that actually that wasn't something we were going to do.
Okay.
I was quite happy not to have that one.
And I was going to say Dexter probably was falling in line with that too. He's just like, Mom doesn't want this. We're not going to.
He didn't listen to me a lot of the time, but that time he did.
Adorable. Okay, so then you had scheduled induction 38 weeks. And you were going along just fine. You had a scan at 36 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, what you said earlier. And it looked good there. Anything, so did 38 weeks come along and you just headed to the hospital? Or
Yeah, so 36-week scan was all fine. Dexter's approximate weight was about 7 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was still absolutely fine. So induction was booked for the 20th. He was born on the 21st, on the 20th of November. And yeah, I had to be at hospital at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay.
So got up, took Rosie to my mum's and headed there by myself, drove myself to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because that's the independent person that I am. I decision to go on my own. I do have friends and family around me, but for me, I made the conscious decision that I needed to deal with my emotions in that moment, and I didn't want to be worrying about everyone else around me. I know that if I had anyone there who loved me, they would be worried about me, with me worrying about them.
Yes.
And I didn't want that to be in the moment. I was really fortunate. My community midwife that had been there throughout, she had promised to be there, and she was.
Yeah.
So 7:30 in the morning, she was waiting for me outside the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah, I started to be induced. I had fought very hard. Our induction process over here, I'd actually used America as my point of reference with this.
Yes.
Our induction point over here is that you get something to dilate your cervix enough to break your waters, and then once your waters are broken, you can then have the drip. But obviously, because Dexter's head was so exposed without waters being around him, I wanted to have the drip but not have my waters broken.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Which I had to fight quite hard for. I had to go through 2 different consultants to get it okayed, but we got there in the end.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I started the drip at 8:30 in the morning on the Wednesday, and by 8:30 that evening, so 12 hours later, I had made no progress at all. So I'd been contracting all day, but unfortunately, without the pressure of his head on my cervix, nothing was happening.
Gotcha.
So so I made the decision to get my waters broken.
Okay. So that would be frustrating. And contractions were quite painful. What kind of pain control did you have at the time, or was it
At
just
that point,
toughing it out?
I'd had nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
No, I'm very independent. I'm very headstrong. Like labour. I quite like being in control of my body.
Yeah.
I had my labour with Rosie, I had no pain relief whatsoever.
Yeah, great.
So I kind of had gone in hoping for the same with Dexter. I did, however, when we got to about 11 o'clock in the evening, there was quite a high risk with Dexter, although I was told, of him potentially having a shoulder dystocia, because his head obviously wasn't the size of a normal head, that his shoulders were potentially larger than his head.
Yeah.
So there was quite a high risk that his head would be born and his shoulders would potentially get stuck.
Yes.
So I had a examination about 11 o'clock, and I said to my midwife, can I try some gas and air just to see? Because if his shoulders are going to get stuck, or if something is going to happen, I just want something to distract me. It was very much a distraction technique at that point. I loved the gas and air. It was my best friend.
Sweet. Great. You're like,
um,
yes.
yeah, it was. I'd never had it before, and I loved it. I had that for the rest of my labour.
Okay. And okay, so 11 o'clock, you got the gas. Doing okay. It's starting. So they did break the water. Did break your water.
Yeah, and Dexter was coping well with it.
He
He
was
did
okay.
really well. Yep, his heart rate was still fine. I had decided to have continuous monitoring
Yes. Okay.
at that moment. When we got to about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, I think between 11 and 12, he was moving a lot and fidgeting and
Mm.
kind of kept moving away from the monitor.
Oh.
Um, so I decided to take it off for a little while.
Okay.
And we did every half an hour heart rate checking.
Yeah.
At that point.
Because for those who have never experienced this kind of thing, a lot of times there's obviously the risk of him passing away during labor, right? Either the
That was,
strain.
yeah.
And so there's some people ask if they want to have monitoring, and you had opted originally to have continuous monitoring to make sure he's doing okay. And then some people decide, no, I just want to, I'm going to just not know if he passes or how that looks. So, so every half an hour you guys were checking in on him though,
Yeah,
after
for
this time.
me, my midwife knew it was quite important for me to know. I wanted to know what
Yeah.
was going on with him. We had got to that point. So yeah, it was very important.
Okay. Okay. So then tell us how the rest of the night progresses, because we're at around 11 midnight now on that
Yep.
day. And so
Um,
how does it go?
I think we got to about 1 or 2 in the morning, and I remember looking at my midwife and saying to her, I'm going to tell you that I can't do this anymore, which I know means that I'm going to need to push soon. And I remember saying that to her, and she checked me, and I was 10 centimeters.
Oh,
Um,
you're there.
so I think that was about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
There had been one time where checking Dexter's heart rate had been a bit more difficult,
Mm.
and I had my midwife with me, but I had a senior midwife as well, who was overrunning the whole delivery, and she hadn't found his heart rate, and so between gas and air puffing, I asked my midwife to check, and she found him first time.
Okay.
And then we got to 4:30, and there was some confusion whether or not his heart rate had slowed down, whether they were hearing my heartbeat or whether they were hearing his. So they got a like a mobile scanner
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to come into the room, and when they checked his heartbeat at about 5 o'clock, it was slower than mine.
Oh,
So kind of from 4 o'clock where it had been fine, between 4 and 5, it had slowed quite significantly.
right.
Which, if I'm honest, in that moment, I didn't realise what it meant. I was feeling like I needed to push, chugging on the gas and air a lot,
Yeah.
and I didn't really get what was happening in that moment. I knew it was a possibility that he wasn't going to survive labour,
Yeah.
but I think the hope I had was so high that he
Mm-hmm.
would, that I hadn't contemplated that he may not.
Yeah. And that was around 5 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Yeah, so I'd been having contractions since 8 o'clock the previous morning,
Yeah.
and they'd with the drip it had been 4 in 10, so I'd had 4 contractions every 10 minutes for near on 12 hours, near on
Woo.
24 hours even.
That is a lot. Wow.
Yeah, I was tired by that point. I was very tired.
Oh, completely. Yeah. There's no sleep in there. Okay. And then did you get to the point where you were like, I need to push, or he was
Yeah,
ready to be
I was examined about 4 and I was 10 centimeters, but I didn't have an overwhelming sensation to
to
push.
push? Okay.
Um, so when we got to about 5, that's when I kind of started actively pushing. Rosie, I think she took about 10, 15 minutes to push out.
Okay.
Um, it was quite quick, and my body took over. I
Mhm.
had the fetal, I can't think what it's called, the fetal ejection reflex, where literally my body did it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of was hoping for the same with Dexter. But I think I started pushing at about 5, and then they checked his heart rate again at 5:30 and couldn't find it.
Oh,
So at 6 o'clock, they did another scan, and unfortunately, he had passed away.
he did.
So, and I was still pushing in this. Literally, the scan was done
In the
in
middle.
between pushing. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, quite surreal. I had about half an hour of just crying with my midwife, and then I don't know quite how, but then focus switched very much to I wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
It went from sadness to wanting to hold him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dexter had other ideas. I was pushing for 4 hours with him.
Oh.
It was hard. When he was born, it was all apparent why. He was born face first.
Oh, he was.
So he had got himself into quite a awkward position.
Yeah.
And obviously had then passed away in that position. And due to that, he couldn't help at all. There was
Yeah.
no babies usually help get into the
Yes.
position to kind of be born, and unfortunately he wasn't able to do that. I, again, running theme, being very stubborn, I guess I should have said this probably way at the beginning. I had chosen an induction for Dexter over a cesarean,
Yeah.
because for me, I'm a single mum and I've got a 2-year-old, and
Yes.
I weighed up the options of being able to be a mum to
Right.
Rosie over the, it sounds really harsh, over the real need to meet Dexter alive. I knew Dexter wasn't going to live very long, and I had to balance between the two.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
for me, I didn't want to not be able to hug Rosie. I think that comfort was going to be needed, and I didn't want to not be able to pick her up and not be able to hold her. So yeah, I'd made the decision to have an induction. I was at about 6 o'clock in the morning. No, it might have been a bit later, 7 o'clock in the morning. I was offered a cesarean because he very much seemed stuck.
Yeah.
But I do remember crying to my midwife saying, if I'm going to have a cesarean now, I should have had it 24 hours ago.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for me, the senior midwife I had at the time was amazing. And I just said to her, can I just have longer? I just need longer. Can we just see if I can do this? And she was very much like, no, you can do it. We're going to do this. And yeah, at 1 minute to 9 in the morning, just as they were about to, or I think they were changing the shifts over, which would have been the point of making a decision about what to do next with new doctors, Dexter decides to be born. Face first.
Face first. And did they put him right on you? I'm not.
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I got him straight away. I wanted skin to skin contact with him. I was slightly, I'm going to be clear, I was slightly shocked. He was really bruised.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the senior midwife then said to me, he's been sat like that with all the blood rushing to his face
Yes.
for so long. And I think it was just a momentary kind of shock of,
Yes.
I wasn't expecting him to be bruised. And she explained that even if he'd been born alive, he still would have been that colour. He still would have been bruised because of the awkward position he decided to get himself in. So
Yeah.
he was beautiful. He was, the moment I saw him, apart from the shock of the fact that he was very bruised, he
Yeah.
was beautiful, really beautiful.
Oh.
And I was really fortunate. I don't think there was a dry eye in the room. Everyone was crying.
I am sure. I'm sure.
Both midwives were crying. And yeah, it was very, very emotional moment.
Oh, those first moments meeting your baby is just, yeah, it's bittersweet. Little bit of
Definitely.
time. It's like, oh. So, and did you notice any of his features that, I mean, did he look like you? Did he look like Rosie in features?
In that moment, I think I was just so overwhelmed by that moment. I think it was meeting him and being really tired and really proud of myself that I
Yes.
had done it, that
Yes.
I had managed to have him, and he was here. I didn't really, I didn't really kind of do the whole studying him. I was more just like, I've done it, like
Yeah.
he's here. Um, it wasn't until afterwards. I think he did look a lot like me. He had very, very long fingers like Rosie, and he
Oh.
had very, very chunky feet. Um, for such a little boy, he had very, very big, long feet. So afterwards, once I kind of had gathered myself, and then I got to look at all these little features.
Yeah. And you said that he was, you said 5.5 pounds or so?
Yeah, 5 pounds 5 ounces.
Awesome. And how long was he?
He was 52.5 centimeters,
Okay. That is
which
so
obviously again is he
is a
didn't have a
li
head,
yes, exactly.
so
He's missing,
he would
like,
have
he would have been
yeah
taller. He would have been a lot
yes
longer. Exactly. So you had obviously talked about naming him kind of essentially around 20 weeks. So you'd been referring to him as Dexter or Dex
yeah
all along. So those are just kind of fun things to I always love to like what are the fun things you want to do with your baby at the very beginning. So you had skin to skin, and then did you end up going and giving him a bath or what things did you do in the hospital with him to kind of like make memories, make it so something that you could enjoy with him?
after I had him, after I'd had him and all the kind of medical things that
Yes, yes.
had happened, I was transferred to a bereavement suite in the hospital,
Oh, uh-huh.
which is essentially kind of like an annex. It's kind of got a kitchen, a bathroom, and a double bed. So it's kind of like a little
Yes.
flat
Yeah.
in the hospital, the bereavement suite. And my mum and both my sisters and Rosie came up
Oh,
to meet Dexter, which was lovely. So yeah, my whole family was kind of there to meet him and love him.
yeah.
I've got that. I've got the same video that I think majority of parents with siblings have, where Rosie walked in and wanted him from the second she saw him. She wanted him. She wanted to hold him. That was it. He was
Mhm.
hers. No one else was
Mhm.
allowed him. Yeah, which is just lovely. She fell head over heels in love the
Oh,
second she saw him. The innocence of a child who didn't realise there was anything was wrong with him was beautiful, really beautiful. I think I think my whole family was slightly anticipating meeting him. They were slightly nervous. Obviously, no one knew what he would look like.
mhm.
Although we'd seen photos and videos of other babies with anencephaly, you never quite know until they're born the extent of what they're gonna of what of where their head will start,
Yeah.
what you'll see, what will be exposed. I think it's funny because I knew in my heart from the moment I continued the pregnancy that it wouldn't matter to me.
Yes.
Um, but my siblings and my parents, it's slightly different. They didn't know. They weren't going to have that initial "it doesn't matter, he's mine" kind of thought. But everyone that met him, which turned out to be quite a few people in the end,
Really?
just fell in love with him. He was
Oh,
perfect. He was absolutely perfect. We put a little hat on him, and I don't think you could really even tell.
that yeah.
Um, but yeah, he was beautiful, really beautiful.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad that your family was able to come and like that those first few hours are so yeah, they're just so precious. I think it feels a little sacred. Like you are close to this little guy and I think it's awesome. In the bereavement suite, you had a lot of people come visit. What other things did you do while you were there? And what was the plan to go home? That's the other thing. I know it's going to lead into a little bit more about your home, the time at home, but can you tell me what the discussion was with your care team from there?
I think this is where it's going to. I think some people would be quite shocked by
Mhm.
the way that it played out. Actually, in the end, um, So Dexter was born on Thursday morning, quite early, and by midday, my family had come to see him. About 5 o'clock in the evening, everyone had left, and it was just me and Dexter again.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a shower and kind of got myself a bit more presentable. I was very, very tired. So I spent that evening in the bereavement suite, just myself and Dexter, just soaking in as much as I could of him.
Yeah.
We had a static cold cot in the hospital, which kind of a wooden box that had kind of metal plates in it that would keep him cold.
Yeah.
So that was by my bed while I was in the hospital. And yeah, I spent the night taking videos and photos of him. I knew the videos were going to be really crucial to me keeping the memory in my head.
Yes.
So I made conscious effort to make sure I was taking videos of him and photos of him. Yeah, so the next morning, on the Friday morning, I was going to actually, something to mention, on the Thursday evening, we had a charity photographer come to the hospital and take photos of Dexter. I had been told about her before. I was in the fortunate position that because I knew that Dexter wasn't going to survive for long if he was born or at all. I'd met the bereavement midwife prior to going into hospital.
Okay.
So she had already gone through everything that I would be able to be offered that I could have for Dexter. So we had some photos taken that were she told me were going to be printed in black and white, which was lovely. They weren't quite, I think it was hard. I didn't really feel like I wanted to be photographed at that point. I was very tired.
Yes, yes.
And looked awful. So a lot of the photos were of Rosie with him, or my mum, or my sister. I think I only had a few. They're not the best, but still memories.
Yes.
On the Friday morning, I had found something on TikTok actually, which I have mentioned a few times in my TikToks with Dexter, which was a lady that did face castings. So yeah, I had found her on I'd found a lady in Scotland that had done them, and I had contacted her a few weeks prior to the induction and had asked whether there would be any way that I could look into it. And she had put me in touch with a lovely lady who was quite local to me, who had said that she would love to do it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so on the Friday morning, her name's Zoe, she came up to the hospital and she took a cast of Dexter holding my finger and a face cast of him. It was beautiful. She was so respectful with him, and I think she actually fell in love with him a little bit that morning. We are still really good friends now. She's been amazing support. And she actually features a little bit later in our story too. But yeah, she was phenomenal with him. I then bathed him with a bereavement midwife. We gave him a nice bath, which I actually really loved doing. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I thought it would kind of just be a tick box that I'd given him a bath, but actually I really enjoyed making him clean. I did. I didn't expect to do it. I didn't expect to like doing it as much as I actually did like doing it. It felt quite therapeutic, giving him a nice bath and a clean set of clothes, I think.
Yeah.
Something I had done in my pregnancy, which I felt made it felt like it made a big difference to me, and I think everyone that met Dexter also made quite a big difference to them. I made a conscious decision that Dexter was going to have a favourite colour. So Dexter only wore green clothes. I only bought green, like an olive green, baby grows for him. I can't even remember when I had the thought process, but to me, I wanted something. I wanted to have as many points that I knew I was going to have to remember him as possible. And colour for me was really important. For me, boys and blue, it's standard.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, actually, if I put him in something completely different
Yeah.
and have olive green, then actually every time I see olive green, I'm going to have that in my head. I'm going to have Dexter.
Yeah.
And everyone that met him actually all said, I love that Dexter's colour's green. And it just kind of, it continued throughout everything that we did then with Dexter. His funeral very much was around the colour green.
Really? That's
I've
so
since
cool.
had my living room colour painted green, just because
You want, yeah.
I wanted to continue. So yeah, I put him in a different green outfit after he'd
Mm-hmm.
had his
Mm-hmm.
bath, and then that was when the kind of conversations about what were going to happen next happened. Prior to Dexter's birth, there'd been a lot of conversations about what would happen if he was born alive, and very much my preference at that point was if he had been born alive, I would have wanted to take him home straight away.
Yeah.
Because I would have wanted him at home for as little as long as I could have had alive. I hadn't had the conversation about what I was going to do if he had passed away.
Yeah.
I think naively, I had so much hope that he was going to be born alive that I didn't want to enter into that thought process. So then on that Friday morning, found myself in that moment of what am I going to do next? It was a tricky morning, that Friday morning. I found I was still really tired, and I was missing Rose like crazy.
Oh, yes.
My best friend that I'd been with continuously. This was her first night that she'd ever been away from me.
Yeah.
In 2 and 4 months, so 2 years 4 months. It was the first night we'd ever been away from each other, the night that he was born. So I was missing her like crazy, and I was trying to balance up what I should do, what would be the best thing for us. I had the option of spending 5 days at the bereavement suite, and as lovely as it was also quite lonely.
It's
Being on
not
my
home.
own,
Yeah.
and I couldn't work out how it was going to be beneficial for me to stay there on my own. I couldn't even go and get myself food because the mum in me couldn't leave Dexter on his own.
Yes.
So I did feel quite isolated and quite alone in the room. So the Friday morning, I had decided that I was going to go home. I had already made funeral arrangements for Dexter. I did that at 28 weeks. I'd gone to our local funeral home. I'd introduced myself, and we'd had brief conversations about what I would have wanted at that point. And I knew that the bereavement midwife was friends with the funeral home. So on that Friday morning, I had decided that I was going to go home and that Dexter was going to go to the funeral home. But I had decided very much that I wasn't going to leave him at the hospital. So I was either taking him to the funeral home myself, or he was going to be going to the funeral home with them, which the bereavement midwife arranged for me. So the funeral home came to pick him up at 3:00 in the afternoon. And I got home. I went from the hospital. I drove myself from the hospital at 3:00. After saying goodbye to Dexter, I drove myself home. I had spoken to the bereavement midwife, and the funeral home from my house is 4 minutes. It's very, very close. So I had already said to her, I'll be there 8:00 tomorrow morning. Like, I'm going to be there. I'm not going to not see him, like, every day I can. I will be there. That was in my head, my rational thoughts of how this was going to go. I picked Rosie up from the childminder, and we got home, and I walked into my house, and my heating had broken. So yeah, we're end of November.
Yes, I was going to say that will be cold.
It was 12 degrees in the house.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
It was freezing. I was one day postpartum and in my loft trying to fix my boiler, like you do. I got down from the loft and I sat down on my bed, and I just cried, and I just was like, what have I done? Why have I left him? And I was in a state. I was in an absolute state. In my head, I had left him and he was on his own, and that was horrific. How could I have done that?
Yeah.
I rang the bereavement midwife and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I can't. I need him. I need my baby back. And she was like, okay, how can we do this? And she, like I said, was very good friends with the funeral director. She rang the funeral director, who rang me, and I was just like, I can't do this. I need him. I need him back. I'll either go back to the hospital and be with him at the hospital, or I want him at home with me. And she was amazing, the funeral director. She was like, give me a few hours and I'll bring Dexter home. And she went up to the hospital and picked up their cold cot or cuddle cot, and then went to the funeral home, got Dexter, and brought him home to me, which was surreal because I think in my head, I think my heating being broken was my sign that I needed him home. I was like, it's cold here anyway. Why am I not with him? Like,
Right.
I need him. So yeah, they brought him home. Unfortunately, the cuddle cot that they had brought with them from the hospital was broken. So it was leaking everywhere, all over my living room. By this point, we're at 8 o'clock at night now. It's getting on. It's dark. It's very cold in my house. Everyone's wearing coats. I'm holding Dexter, sitting on the sofa. I had 2 funeral directors. I had friends with me and Rosie and Dexter in my arms. We were rallying around trying to find ice packs to try and keep him cool.
Yes.
And then my friend had the genius idea that because Dexter had a terminal condition, I had gone to visit a hospice, a children's hospice, and she had the genius idea to ring them and see if they had a cuddle cot, which they did. And they were phenomenal. Within an hour, they'd brought a new cuddle cot over for us.
Amazing.
Friday evening was the first evening that Dexter stayed at home with us. Rosie had gone to bed by the time everything was sorted. So Saturday morning was like Christmas morning in our house. Rosie ran down the stairs and I was like, what's that? And she's like, oh, it's Dexter. And she was so happy that baby was laying in his Moses basket in our living room. And it was beautiful. And she was in shock, and it was lovely. He looked like he'd had a lovely night's sleep. He was looking beautiful in the living room, and it was lovely.
I just love that so much. Like you said, it was like Christmas morning, because I can imagine my daughter, she was 3.5, and she would have done the exact same thing. I bet she just was so excited brothers are fun. Little brothers are fun.
Definitely. Yeah, she was really, really happy to have him home. And it felt so right. The Friday evening was stressful, but for me, I think it was just a mix of big emotions that I went with the decision to go home. And for me, I guess it was what I knew was the norm, that you give the baby to the funeral home, and then I knew it was an option that I could see him every day. So in my head, I was doing what I hadn't really looked at the opportunity, like the prospect of bringing him home, even though he passed away. But the option was always there for us, and it kind of just fell into our laps.
Yeah. Okay, so even though you hadn't really, like, nobody had said outright, like, you can take him home.
They had.
They had.
Midwife,
okay.
Yeah. The bereavement midwife had told me at 28 weeks, when I was 28 weeks pregnant, that the option was there to take him home. I didn't really listen too much to her at that point.
Yeah.
Because I think I was so fixated on the fact that he was going to be alive. I was going to be taking him home alive. That in my head was so much my focus.
Yes.
That I didn't really think about. I guess to a point, I didn't think too much about what would happen when he had passed. I guess in my head, I was taking him home alive, and obviously, knowing he was going to pass, and then he would already be at home. I hadn't thought about the
Like
transition from
exactly.
the
Okay.
hospital to home if he had already passed. Which
Gotcha.
I think that's the thing I'm realizing, is that when you're in that moment, it's very difficult to make decisions. When
Yes.
you're
Yes.
when you're in that moment, decision making is really hard. Even though I knew what was potentially going to happen in our story, actually, until you're in the moment, it's very difficult to know what you want and how you want things to work and to go, because there's so many other things to think of, and there's things you haven't even thought you would think of that you're thinking of,
Yep. Yep.
which I think, is so hard.
It's overwhelming at times where you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think. And it is hard. Yeah. And then you have this grief on top of it. Like you said, when you just got home and you just started crying, like your heater, was the thing that kind of pushed you over the edge. It sounded like of just like, what did I do?
Yeah, definitely. But also, I think in the same moment of how can everything be going wrong at this precise moment, was very much actually,
this,
I think something else I was really conscious of throughout my whole pregnancy and beyond with Dexter was regret. I knew I didn't want to have regret. I knew that for me as a person, regretting not doing something was going to cause me real anguish in my life.
yes.
So any opportunity I had with Dexter that felt right, I wanted to do. And I think in that moment of sitting on the bed and reevaluating my life choice was very much, I regret. Right now, I'm regretting what I've done, and I need to go back. I need to work out how
Yep.
I can either go back to the hospital and spend those 5 days in the bereavement suite, if that's what the option is. As much as I felt lonely and I felt isolated, the need to have Dexter with
Yes.
me was so strong, or I needed to work something else out that was going to work for us.
Yeah.
And I was just very fortunate that the people around me, I think the funeral lady, she knew the moment she took him, she said, I knew you were going to need him. I just knew. She was
She said
phenomenal.
that.
She really, really was phenomenal. And she did say to me, I would never have taken him. She said, I don't know why that decision in that moment. Said, I could see you just had made it, and it was just almost a process that you had to go through.
Yeah.
She said, but she said, she was amazing. She was really, she knew that I needed him, and she moved heaven and earth to get him back to me.
That is,
and I was really fortunate.
it's amazing. So how long did you end up having him at home with you?
He stayed from the Friday evening till the Monday afternoon, the week after. So for 10 days we had him at
For
home.
10 days. And
Yes.
this is the thing that we chatted about, and I just think this is amazing. I do wish I had more time with my son, honestly. And
I
think
never anticipated to have as much time, if
yes.
I'm honest. I think something I'm finding quite tricky to get across on my TikToks, and to people that don't know our story very well, is that I almost feel like he did it for me, but Dexter kept really well.
Yeah.
I think for us, I think scientifically, because my waters had been broken for over 12 hours before he was born, and he only passed away 2 hours before he was born.
Yes.
I think he wasn't sitting in a lot of fluid inside me, and I think that kept his skin in a really good condition.
Yes.
And I think usually a cuddle cot is used for around 5 days, because usually around 5 days a baby is deteriorating.
Yes.
The funeral lady, she came to the house every day. For
she
the
did.
first few days, she warned me of what could happen. I was fully prepared that his skin may start changing, or that there may be some leaking, and I was fully prepared.
Yes.
And hand on heart, Dexter did not change.
Oh.
He stayed perfect. There was no leaking. His skin slightly softened, is what I would
Yes.
say.
Okay.
He slightly softened, kind of that tautness had kind of softened slightly.
Yeah.
But his skin was still. I changed his clothes the day that he left us, and his skin was still perfect.
Oh.
Which I said to the bereavement midwife, I don't know, that was his little gift to me. The kind of little, I'm sorry, Mum. Sorry I didn't meet you alive, but yeah, it meant that in those 10 days we made some amazing memories.
Yeah.
Things that I hadn't ever anticipated that I would do with him, I got to do with him, which now have meant that I feel like I've processed things in a really healthy way. I feel like I'm sad, obviously, that he's not with me, but I'm happy that I got those memories and that I've got them to look at. His face casting, I will be getting back in the next few weeks, which I'm really excited. I can't
Yeah.
wait to hold his cheeks again,
Yeah.
and stroke his little nose. When I got home on the Saturday, I very much decided that I had been given a gift of time, that I didn't anticipate I would have, and I wanted to make the most of it. I got in touch with the casting lady again and was like, I want to get his hands and feet done. I want
Yes.
everything that I can remember him by. And I was so fortunate that she came out on the Saturday morning
Oh.
and did his hands and feet for me. The more I thought about it, I had photos with Dexter, but when Rosie was born, I had newborn photos done with her,
Yes.
and I very much wanted to try and recreate that. I wanted special photos of my newborn baby,
Mm-hmm.
and I got in touch with a local photographer who very kindly came to the house on, I think it was the Sunday morning she came, and she took one of the most treasured pictures I've ever had, of me and Dexter.
I also want to point out one thing that I think is great. Well, with your newborn photos that you took, you were not exhausted
Yes.
from having been in labor. And I was like, oh my goodness, what a blessing to have another opportunity. And it's probably beautiful and lovely.
I think
And
that was the thing for me, is I did have almost that kind of realization on the Saturday morning, after we'd come down and it had been Christmas and Rosie had
yeah,
seen Dexter and she'd held him, and I'd taken a few more photos of her holding him because I had the ones at the hospital.
yeah,
But I had this opportunity suddenly that actually I can take photos of both my children in my house.
together,
Like,
together.
I can.
Yeah,
I'm a single mum anyway, so I set my phone up quite a lot just to take videos of me and Rosie because
yeah.
I want to remember that moment. And so I did that a lot. I put my phone on the side on record, and we danced and we watched films and we did simple but lovely things while recording to remember them, so that we had it with us always. I was very fortunate that my family and friends actually took Rosie out on the Saturday and the Sunday, so that I had some time with Dexter at
Yeah.
home on my own, because I had anticipated that it would be 5 days. I kind of had thought that by his day 5, which was going to be the Tuesday, that I was going to have to be saying goodbye to him.
Yeah.
But like I said, he gave me even more the gift of time. We got to Tuesday and he still looked perfect. We got to Wednesday and he still looked perfect. And then we got to Thursday and I just thought, do you know what? Whatever this brings, I'm not letting go of him until I have to.
Yeah.
And I spoke to the funeral home and they were like, we would like him for a day before his cremation. Like, that would be helpful to us.
Yes.
But you can still see him, you can still come to us. They're literally 4 minutes from us. So that was what decided. On the Monday, he went to the funeral home. But again, yeah, there was lots of other things within that. When we got to Tuesday, and he still looked perfect, I decided to take him for a walk. I got Rosie's pram out, which I hadn't expected to use or to need, because I hadn't thought that I would be needing it for Dexter. And there was something really lovely about putting him in her pram. That I had the photos of her in. And me and my sister took him for a walk. And just at the bottom of my road. So we weren't. It's hard to kind of portray to people kind of the distance. He was only out for about 20 minutes or so. And actually, that was more me than him. I was exhausted. My legs weren't working very well. I'd been pushing for 4 hours. Even by Tuesday, I was still tired and still kind of feeling the effect of labour. Rose, just keep the noises down. You don't need to be singing. Silly Billy. So at the bottom of my road, there is a lake. So we took him to the lake, and I got him out of his pram, and he saw the ducks swimming on the lake. And my sister took some beautiful photos that the sun was kind of peering through the trees and straight onto his face. And he looked content. He looked like he was sunbathing. He looked like he had his little eyes kind of
enjoying
laying in the sun. He did. He looked, for me, he really looked like he enjoyed his walk. He enjoyed being out in the fresh air. I really needed, I think, at that point to get some fresh air. We'd been in since we'd got home on the Friday, and obviously I'd been in hospital for the 2 days while I was in labour and the day. So I think I kind of needed some fresh air as well. So it was really beneficial for both of us just to get a little bit of a change of scenery, a little bit of fresh air, and some lovely photos. Again, some really lovely photos and some lovely memories of him.
With your sister too. I mean, like, I just love that there's so many people that are very much like, I'm making a memory with Dexter too. Like, we're going to do this.
That continued, actually. I think the fear of death is very real with people. And I think it's not until people had the opportunity to meet Dexter that so many people that have met him have said, he's just a baby. He was just a beautiful baby. Like, there was no fear. There was nothing scary. There was nothing but a beautiful baby that was at peace. And Rosie's childminders, they came round. They play quite a big part in our life. Rosie goes to them 3 days a week. They're lovely bunch of really strong, independent women again. And they came round and they all held Dexter. And it was just like they came to meet my baby.
Exactly.
It was just as a normal meeting. Other family came and met him as well. My nephews met him, which my sisters were really, really nervous about. I think there was an element of, if we don't mention Dexter, then we don't have to answer any awkward questions. I think that was kind of a thought process. But actually, when they saw Rosie's reaction and they saw the way that actually a child doesn't notice.
No.
A child sees the innocence and the purity of a situation and just sees another person to love. And when they saw that in Rosie, both my sisters were very much like, we want our children to meet him. Which was really beautiful, because it just meant he was surrounded by even more love. For me, anyone that wanted to meet him, then meet him, because he deserved all the love that he could get in the short period of time that he was here. And I was really grateful that people wanted to meet him. And I was really grateful to change people's perception. I was grateful that people could see that he was just a beautiful baby.
This makes my heart so happy. I'm just like, this is amazing. Like, that's one thing. So my daughter did meet our son, and I do wish other cousins got to meet. Just like Dexter's cousins got to meet him. I think that is so great. I think it's so great.
I think for me anyway, and I don't even know, I hadn't done a lot of thinking about how I was going to deal with Rosie. She knew that Dexter wasn't going to be coming home. We'd had that conversation in numerous different ways throughout my pregnancy. As much as we had enjoyed him kicking and moving, I very much, from as soon as I was able to explain to her, very much told her that Dexter would be living in the stars. Obviously, for a 2-year-old, she didn't know that wasn't the normal for her, for a baby. For her, she hadn't got a sibling that had been born and come home before,
Right.
so there was no kind of preconception in her head of what it should be.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought too much about how. I knew that I wanted her to meet him. I knew that was really important to me. I hadn't really thought too much about what that was going to look like until it happened. And then it just kind of, the relationship that they had just built.
Yeah.
The more time they spent together, I found her, I think, and I did take a video of, she got a book and was sitting by the foot of the Moses basket reading to him one morning while I was making breakfast. She was like any other sibling that at 2 years old thought she could lift him by herself.
Oh, yep.
Obviously.
Yep. Obviously.
Like
this is a very
so
natural thing to do.
Yeah. I had to be really careful that she wasn't left on her own with him, because she wanted him. She literally loved him. I didn't understand why she couldn't have him all of the time with her. Yeah, she picked up very quickly on things that people were saying, which was also really cute. I would always call him Dexy Bear, was one thing I would.
Oh.
I don't know why we do nicknames, but I always do.
Yep.
And I turned around at one point. I think I just got dressed or something. I turned around and she's going, Dexty Bear. I was just like,
and there she goes.
and there she goes again. Yeah, they built and had in those 10 days was something really special. And I did continue, in the moments that we had together, continue to remind her that he wasn't going to be staying and that he was going to the stars. And we had quite a lot of moments. I have some videos on my phone that I haven't shared with people, and I'm not going to, of us singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with Dexter, as that was the way that I could explain to her that he was going to be one of those stars. Yeah. It's okay.
I think it's so beautiful. Like the time that you had together, that Rosie, Dexter is very much a part of your family. And I just like, after you bring home a baby, everybody just kind of hunkers down, right? Like and that's what it feels like when you guys were just home with each other for that 10 days and just going about your business and being with each other. I think it's such a beautiful picture that, of what your family looked like for those 10 days.
I've had lots and lots of questions from people about kind of, where did he sleep? Where did he stay? What did you do with him? The cuddle cot essentially is a mat that's laid generally in a Moses basket, obviously with a baby. Because the cuddle cot at the hospital was broken, the one that the hospice brought us was actually a little bit bigger than a normal one. So I didn't have a Moses basket at home because I didn't expect Dexter to live. So I hadn't bought a Moses basket. I was going to borrow one if he'd come home alive. Obviously, that didn't transpire. The funeral home did have one that they brought him home in, but the mat that we had then ended up with, the cuddle cot that we had ended up with, was too big for the Moses basket.
Okay.
So Dexter took quite a place on my sofa.
Oh, good.
He laid across the sofa. We kind of removed a cushion from the back, and he laid there, and we put a pregnancy pillow around him,
just around him,
just so it felt like it was a little bit more
exactly
enclosed.
Cozy. Yeah.
Yeah. I kept a blanket on him the whole time because, and actually in a lot of my videos, it's one of those things that I don't think you realise you do, but as a mum, instinctively, I needed to keep him warm.
Yep.
Even though I knew he needed to be cold.
Yep.
As a mum, I needed to keep him warm. So I kept, I was very kindly gifted a knitted blanket that went with Dexter, and that stayed on him the whole time. It was a beautiful olive green colour. But stick with the tradition. Most of his teddies were also olive green, or cream, and he had a whole array of teddies that stayed around him on the sofa. So he had his own little setup. He looked beautifully peaceful with this little setup with his blanket on him. It was just very, very cold because the mat obviously keeps their temperature down. But it didn't affect. Yeah, so it didn't take up a lot of space. It didn't use anything that was mine as such. He was just on the sofa. Generally, the cuddle cot's purpose, the reason that they use them in hospitals, or they are obviously for when you bring them home, is that the whole design of a cuddle cot is because it's a thin mat that you can hold baby while in the mat to help continue to keep their body cool. Because we had a larger mat, that wasn't the case for Dexter. I couldn't hold him in the mat. However, I found that because he was in it, he obviously laid on it all night, so he had a good kind of 10 hours every evening in it. I would generally use it that I would hold him for half an hour, and then I would put him down back for an hour, and then I would hold him again for half an hour, and then I'd put him back down for an hour. Something I found I found it really comforting, actually, that when I was holding him, and when I really loved, I think I've got a fixation with baby's hands, no matter whose baby's hands, but just baby's hands as such, and his hands were so soft. When I was holding and playing with his hands, they would warm up. Obviously, my body heat would warm his hands up, which I found so comforting. That even though he did feel cold, but obviously my heating wasn't working. It was cold in this house. I had lots of layers on. That may have been another reason why he stayed so well as well, because the temperature of the house was so cold. But I had lots of layers on myself, so his body wasn't too cold for me to hold. But holding his hands and warming them up was just, there was just something so lovely about it. So yeah, it was. I do feel very grateful that I got that time with him. Really do. And I do really feel like it will continue to make a big difference in the way that we process and grieve Dexter.
It really, I just, in meeting with you, Emily, and maybe it's also just your personality and everything, I just am surprised at how, like, you did get a lot of time with him, and that makes a huge difference where you're at. It feels like to me, because
the thing is, I think the more I think about it, I hadn't left Rosie until Dexter was born, and she was 2 and 4 months at that point.
Right.
So why would I expect it to be natural to leave my baby who's a few days old? Like, the more I kind of kept thinking about it, it's not rational to expect a mother to leave their baby.
No.
I don't think it's helpful. I think I do really, I know it's not for everyone, and I completely understand that some people this may feel too much, or isn't what they want, or doesn't go with their religious views, and I completely get that. But I do think that spending that time having just simple moments that you're never going to have again. It wasn't that I was under any illusion that I wasn't that I was going to keep him. Like, I knew he wasn't alive. I knew that, but that didn't stop me wanting to just love him until the point that I couldn't physically hold him anymore. And I think that's what getting across to some people is difficult to do, that it wasn't that I was under any illusion that he was going to suddenly wake up, or that I was under any illusion that he wasn't dead. Like, I knew. How could you not know? Like, he wasn't moving or breathing or crying, or like, I knew that he wasn't alive, but that didn't mean that I didn't want to love him. And I didn't want to, like, I wanted to look after him. I wanted to change his clothes so that I had the memories of the clothing that he'd been in. I wanted to make sure that I had different photos of us doing different things to hold on to those memories.
Yeah. You guys decided to go, the funeral home said that they would like to have Dexter back at least a day before his cremation. And they did already have his cremation date on the schedule, or was it essentially when the time was that you were going to bring him in, that then they would plan to cremate him?
On the Friday when I met the funeral director, and when Dexter went with them initially,
Yes.
I had asked her whether or not he could be, whether they possibly had a space, and whether he could possibly be cremated on the 4th of December, which was his due date.
Oh,
Because I kind of felt in my head that kind of tied it all round.
yes, yeah.
And she said yes, and so the 4th of December was always the date that we were working towards. That was his due date. That was his burial date. That was when it was all gonna end. So yeah, we knew that was the date that we were working towards.
Okay. And then so he still looked great even up until that Monday. Did you take him over? Did the funeral home come in and get him?
They came and collect him. Again, I was really super fortunate. My midwife, Sarah, who had been there for everything, she came to be with me that morning. It was quite nice, actually. We had a poignant moment where I said to her, realistically, it was only me and her that really knew him. She was the one that had used the Doppler and heard his heartbeat. She was the one that had been to all the scans with me. So yeah, we had a lovely kind of moment. We both cried. The funeral home came, and again, I think one thing that I found really super helpful with having Dexter at home for those 10 days was the fact that I had built up such a relationship with the funeral home, and I knew that she loved him. You could just see, everyone that met Dexter fell in love with him, but you could just see that she knew how much I loved him, and she got him back for me. And then I could see how much she loved him, so I trusted her to give him to her. I knew she was going to look after him for me. I knew that was the right thing at that moment. He needed to be prepped for his cremation, and there were some things I couldn't do while he was at home. I had a lot more freedom than I would have done in a bereavement suite, but I needed to register his death before we could get the cremation done. And I didn't want to leave him. I think that was something for me, once I had him back with me, was that I very much wanted to spend every second with him until I couldn't anymore. So after he went to they came and picked him up on the Monday, and they were super respectful. They came, they put him in a Moses basket, so he looked beautiful, and they took him. He was only 4 minutes down the road from me, and she had said to me, do you mind, is it okay if I talk to him? And I was like, no, please talk to him. Like, that is like so lovely for me, that you're gonna love my baby. So she did. She was almost talking him through what was going to happen, so that I think to reassure me, but to reassure him as well. Which was really lovely. Like, come on, Dex, I'm going to take you. Going to take you now to the funeral home, and Mummy will see you tomorrow. Which was really lovely. I made it easier. Made it easier to say that initial goodbye from the house. And I knew that I was going to see him the next day anyway. I knew that was what was going to happen, and I knew I had jobs to do. I had prepped Rosie on the Monday morning. That was a hard conversation. But I had been advised by someone that it would have been good for Dexter to leave her a present. So he left her a teddy bear that said Big Sister Rosie on it. And she was okay when she got home from the childminder that day. She asked where he was, and I reminded her that I told her in the morning that Dexter wasn't going to be there. And she kind of was like, okay. And I was like, but he's left you this teddy bear. And I think she asked 2 or 3 times after that.
going into the evening, like, where's Dexter? And just had to kind of remind her that he wasn't going to be coming home now. She's very clever for her age, and she's also really compassionate. And I think she's so used to it being just us two, that I think she then had kind of got herself used to us being a three for a little while, but then children adapt so quickly that she then went very quickly back to it being the two of us again. So yeah, it was a hard conversation to have with her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the hard thing for me actually in that conversation was that I had been using that Dexter was going to the stars. That was our kind of, that was my explanation that I knew she understood. And I think because for me in that moment on the Monday, he wasn't quite in the stars yet. He'd been in the house. He was still on Earth. He was still here as such. That it didn't feel that he went to the stars until he was cremated. So I had a few days of, where is he? Like, how do I explain of where?
Yeah.
So I kind of just used, he just wasn't here at the moment. And then on the Wednesday after his cremation, I went to he's in the stars, and we went to look for him in the stars. So yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh, those are hard conversations.
Yeah.
Did you guys end up having a funeral service or any sort of memorial for Dexter?
Yeah, Dexter had two actually. He was quite greedy. We had
great.
We had one at our local church. We had in the morning. We had a little service, a candle lighting service, with the children, so that all the kids could be there. So my nieces and nephews, and Rosie could all be there, so they could light a candle for Dexter. And then in the afternoon, he had a cremation, which was adults only. I wanted to be able to have the space without the pressure of trying to hold it all together. With children there. So I tried to make it as beautiful as I could. I tried to put little things in to make it as nice as I could. I carried Dexter's coffin, and I wrote him a poem that I read. He had a little story read to him in his cremation, which was really cute. And we did like a video montage of loads of photos that we'd had. So I had one of everyone with Dexter, everyone holding him. There was some of my Stan on there as well. And some of the maternity photos were shown, and loads of photos with Rosie. Played a version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which was beautiful. Yeah, it was really lovely. It went very quickly. I wasn't prepared for the kind of funeral time to be as quick. It almost felt like it went so quickly. And I don't know if that's because you have that anticipation, don't you, that is ultimately it. That's when you have to say goodbye. Oh, sorry. So yeah, and it was a beautiful day though. We had bubbles playing afterwards. Bubbles playing? No, bubbles blowing. And I bought a really big teddy bear that we'd got some helium balloons. This teddy bear was sitting in his cremation holding balloons, where I put his coffin, and he's called Big Bear, and Big Bear is now at home with us. But
good.
We did have some fun moments on the way to the crematorium. Dexter was obviously very little, so we went in a limo from the funeral home. And Big Bear sat in the front seat of the limo.
That is the best.
So yeah, rolling up to the crematorium with a teddy bear in the front of a black limo.
That is so fun, and Yeah, that a fun memory right there.
Yeah, and Big Bear now lives in Rosie's bedroom.
Yeah.
And she loves him. She really loves him. He's a very big comfort, actually. He's
Oh, good. As she grins at you, I'm sure.
yeah. She's like, I'm still up. You thought I'd go to sleep, but look at me.
Emily, what a beautiful story of Dexter. And it just makes I have been smiling more on like during an interview more than I have in so long, just because I just think of all the beautiful, beautiful memories that you have together as a family. And I just think that is so neat. I just think it is so, so neat.
I do think that there was something special in carrying a baby that I knew wasn't gonna survive. And I think I knew that the whole way through, that actually I knew that the outcome wasn't going to be what I had hoped for right at the beginning of my pregnancy. But I also had almost this blessing that I know so many parents don't have when they're given that devastating news that their baby isn't alive anymore. And I had the blessing that I knew that news was going to come. So it was, how was I going to navigate until that moment? And I think having that time and that processing time meant that I could enjoy things that maybe other parents that don't have that and are shocked by their news that they have devastatingly, because they think they're going to have a live baby. I think I had an advantage on that, and I think that did mean my mindset was slightly different. And it's quite difficult for me, I think, when I am told quite a lot at the moment that I'm so strong. You're so strong for what you did. But actually, I feel like the mums that don't have the choice, they're the strong ones. And actually, I made a hard decision to continue with my pregnancy, but I had a choice. I was very fortunate that there was a choice, and that was my choice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a devastating shock. I would have loved him to have lived for a little while.
Yes.
But actually, I don't know if now, looking back, if I would have traded the 10 days that I did get with him for a tiny bit of him being alive. I don't know what would be more precious to me. Both equally as precious when you don't have.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Emily, I just can't thank you enough for that wonderful story of Dexter and your experience. It's like I said, I've just been smiling and thinking of how beautiful that time you had with him, and I do love the fact that you kind of made the decision to take advantage of that time that you had, and you prepared, and you like you said, had a mindset of like, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to do the best I can to enjoy my time with him. Thank you so much. And I like to ask this question: is there anything else that we might have missed, or is there anything else you want to say to Dexter before we close up?
That makes me emotional. There's so much I would say to Dexter.
I know.
I am not going to be able to talk. I am incredibly grateful that Dexter chose me to be his mum. And although his time was short, he made a massive impact and has continued to make that impact, not just on me, but on thousands of people now. He is hopefully making people aware that definitely for the UK, and hopefully going to be spreading to other countries, that the option is there to take your baby home. That time can be given thanks to a cuddle cot. We raised enough money on a GoFund to replace the one that had broken at the hospital, that unfortunately we didn't get to use. And I'm currently in the process of making a booklet to go with that cuddle cot, and hopefully, depending on how it looks once it's finished, hopefully go to all the other hospitals in the UK, just to help people, like we said earlier, in those moments that you're first told that your baby isn't alive anymore. The rush of information is overwhelming. And for me, definitely, words were really hard to process. So I've decided to make a booklet to go with it, to go with the cuddle cot, so that parents, when they've got that kind of downtime after you've gone through the birth and the shock is still overwhelming and there's so many things to think about, but you kind of have that down moment of, let's just take a second, that they can see this brochure of the things that I did at home with Dexter, to hopefully encourage them to potentially take their babies home as well, even just for one night, because I do, and I've said it a few times, but I do really feel like it's helped us process. And I've had so many people say to me that they weren't given the option, or they wish they had done it. So even by raising awareness and having a booklet that people can look at, even if it just means that one parent doesn't have that little bit of regret that they didn't take their baby home, then I feel like I've done something from this experience. And that Dexter has kind of continued. I've also, in 2 weeks' time, my midwife, Sarah, I nominated her for an award. Dexter had only been born. I think he was still at home with me. I think we kind of into day 8 or 9, I think. And I found this midwifery award, and I wrote a nomination for Sarah. And to my surprise, she's been shortlisted. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, she's very openly told me that Dexter's changed her life and changed the way that she is. The bereavement midwife tells me numerous times that she's learned so much from Dexter. So yeah, I'm just, the thing I would say to Dexter is just thank you.
Yeah, that is perfect. Emily, thank you so much again for coming on and telling us about Dexter and all the lives he's touched, because I feel like like you said, I've been touched by his life and what you've done for him. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.